One, two, three. I'm
I'm going
going
to
to
die.
die.
Perfect.
Yes.
Excellent. Excellent.
You ever done that?
I feel alive now, actually.
I do too. Tingly. Got the chills.
In this episode, we are talking to Ned Buskirk. Ned is the founder of the You're Going to Die movement. His aim? To bring people creatively into the conversation of death while helping inspire and empower them to confront loss and mortality without shame or embarrassment. If you would like to support the show or know more about us, sign up for the newsletter at deathhangout.com or click on the button on screen. Now get ready for this episode. You are going to die.
Well, I feel like my relationship with death started at a pretty young age, and but I think early on it's that fascination that we have when we're kids with something that's a pretty real part of life. My dog dies, or you see a dead squirrel out in the yard, whatever it is, that it's there, but there's not a lot of conversations happening around it. So I'm growing up watching movies and TV shows that capture a lot of that truth around mortality and death and dying and people getting killed and dead bodies. I think I watched a lot of things that I don't know, maybe most kids don't watch, but in my household it was okay to stay up a little late and watch Ripley's Believe It or Not. And I think just listening to Jack Palance's voice alone is enough to, scare the mortality out of you. And I think when I would go to bed, I would lay in the dark often and just think about the things I'd watched, or the knowing maybe even that I already have, that we have as human beings, like this genetic part of us that we're going to die, getting drawn out by a TV show like that. And I remember coming down to my mom and crying and going into her arms and just wanting to be sort of consoled, and even then not having conversations about it. I don't remember us engaging with death by talking. And at a pretty early age, my mom got cancer for the first time. And she had breast cancer several times through half of my life, my young life. And I just wasn't included in those talks. But the presence of that illness and the death that comes on the edges of something like cancer, that presence of it, that inevitability, the likelihood of it is there, but we weren't talking about it. And when I finally lost my mom in 2004, I think I knew at that point that I needed to take the conversation on myself, that I needed to go to a bereavement group, for the loss of a parent, and to do my own therapy one-on-one with this woman that I met, the therapist that ran that group. It was then that I really took responsibility for death and my mom's death and my eventual death. And I think the show that I do here in San Francisco is born out of all of that, years of that.
Can you tell us a little bit more actually about this movement? I've heard about you with D.S. Moss and his podcast, and I've checked your You're Going to Die. So this is your movement, You're Going to Die movement,
Yeah.
And I see artists, I see poetry, I see music, and still, what's it's all about,
Yeah.
what it's all about, So,
Well, it's in the name, for sure. I think when people ask me about it and I give them a business card that just says you're going to die, and that's all it says.
I'm sure like, people call you back very often after that, you know.
Like I just say, you know, don't leave this business card laying around your workplace. Keep it close. But the question is, I mean, that's confronting. And then I think it's maybe assumed that it can't really be about that. But I mean, that's what it's about. The show is a place for us to be in the conversation of mortality and loss and grief and bereavement and life too. You know, I mean, it's all mixed together. But it didn't start that way. Early on in my master's program back in 2009, I started an open mic, and I think one of the things that I do in my life is I make space for people to get their creativity out and to feel held and safe to do that. And that's the original version of the show. And it's important. It's important that it started there because that's still half the experience. It's when my mother-in-law passed away, the show right after that, by then I'd gotten pretty clear on organization. And I think I'd even named it You're Going to Die, because out of that creative space, or holding that creative space, I was letting people know I wanted them to get that they shouldn't take themselves so seriously, and that the space that I was holding is a place to get it out. Like, what are you doing playing your guitar by yourself in your bedroom? I mean, you can keep doing that forever, and that's great, and I'm sure it's a wonderful concert, you know.
You hear that, Olivier? Yeah.
Shit, now I feel bad. Okay, anyway, go on.
Yes.
Can you invite me, please, after, you know? But anyway, we'll discuss after.
But why not come and share it with others? And why not take that chance? And why not share that thing, even if it's horrible, knowing that the value is that you're being vulnerable and you're being willing to like put yourself out there and take a risk. That's the like beginnings of the show. And after my mother-in-law died, there's a video up on the website. I think the link at the website is Why You're Going to Die. And when you click on that, it's just a video. And it's a video that captures me talking to the audience at the show right after the month after she passed away. And that's when I really got clear. And I'm so grateful that that moment got captured, because my understanding of the show, including this creative space, was then that I wanted to gather and be able to talk about her. And be able to talk about my mother and be able to talk about, you know, the death that's all around us, and to make a space for people to do that all creatively, what happens at the show and what the movement's about, you know, in a far more complex way, like humans are, being with each other's pain and suffering, holding, you know, moments as a community to acknowledge one another in the, you know, heartbreaking parts of life. And that by doing that, not only do we get to be acknowledged for the struggles that we face as humans, whether it is just the ridiculousness of a hard day, you know, at a job that doesn't really totally make sense, doing a lot of things that seem completely ridiculous, because that's how I relate to life for the most part. I mean, look at us right now. What is going on here? Like, just this is a perfect example. Like, look at our little heads on these screens. We're like, got things.
We have no idea. Yeah,
exactly. And so to be able to connect as a community out of that day-to-day existence, where there isn't a lot of space for the open vulnerability that is like the human struggle. And I think death and mortality is definitely, you know, one of the strongest connecting points for our community. I think that's why You're Going to Die is successful, is because, like you described it, we get to be together in that. We get to be brought together in that, as unique as all of our experiences are, even down to like our own death or the loss we've experienced. And we should have that we need to be acknowledged for our unique experience. It's also this connecting of, oh, of course, you all just came from that too today. You all just came from that too this month, whatever that version of struggle is. And we get to hold sort of a tender space at the show for all of that. And it seems necessary and uniquely necessary every time.
What kind of feedback do you get from people that come along to this, and not just the participants, but the people who are just observing it and watching it? What's the key things that you've noticed that in terms of the feedback and what people are getting from it?
Yeah, well, I joke that my guess is that there's a lot of people that maybe leave the show that are like, I don't need to hear any more of that. Thank you. And they don't I don't know about them. They don't talk to me. So I'm saying that initially because, I mean, you go to a show, I joke at the show, I'm like, you just paid money to come and sit down and have me repeatedly tell you you're going to die over and over,
But is it like half of the audience how they walk out? Like you have your lights on, are they still there, or you're just like after?
There's no question that at this point, as long as I've been doing it, someone left at the intermission and they were like, "No, thank you,"
Okay.
So that I'm just saying, I want to just preface my answer to that question with that likely reality. But people come up and hug me. A lot. Okay. It's I think the show is transformative for people in that little evening. I'm not saying it changes lives, but I think people say, what do you want to happen at the show? What do you want people to get? Well, I don't really, like I said, I don't have a message. I'm not coming, like sometimes I'll read from a book that I'm reading or talk about a documentary that I've seen, but there's no plan except that I hope and I think the feedback I get shows that people feel more connected and alive at the end of a show.
It's an interesting thing. People feel more alive going to a show where they're constantly told you're going to die. Yeah.
Yeah, right? I mean, that's the surprise. And I think that's what's wild about people that resist it, and it's okay because I think it's a good measurement for the power of a show called You're Going to Die that sells out regularly, that some people are like, I don't want to go to that. That's too close to something that is more true than most things in our lives. And I think to your point, Keith, I think that experience at a show, that's strange that you go to a show that's saying you're going to die, where you actually literally have to say, I'm going to die to start the show off. That's what I start the show with.
Wow.
I have all of us say it together. It's strange, right? That you would leave it and feel more alive. But I think that's my hope, even personally, in my personal relationship to this movement, is that death, I can source it for a more inspiring, richer, fuller life. I mean, I think that's why I do this personally. And I think that's maybe what's available sometimes for people in it, that you could get more of life by confronting this eventuality.
What do you think the link is in that? What do you think makes that, just the phrase I was about to use, what brings that to life? That focus on death that wakens something in people.
Brings that to life. Perfect.
Yeah. It's the first thing that came. It's good. It's the first thing that came into my mind. I'm sorry.
Perfect. It's perfect. What brings death to life? In the show.
That's the title of the show, by the way. So yes, it's okay.
Yes. What brings death to life? Nice, Keith. Well, what do you feel when we talk like this? I mean, if I can turn it into a question back to you, like, I don't know, like, do you feel something right? Because, like, I feel that. I feel that, the temporality, the tenuous, like, nature, the fragility, like, I can feel it right now. And, being in that truth brings me right here, Mm-hmm. When I talk about my mom, like I started this out with, and it's something that happens at the shows, there's a shift in our mental space. There's a veil pulled back, where we, by being vulnerable and by being with this truth, we become present and we become together more fully, where there's times when we'll just sit for 5 minutes because someone's just done something. Maybe not 5, that's awkward. Maybe that would get awkward, but like we sit for maybe a minute in silence because of something someone just shared. This girl came to a show recently and she wanted to share an audio file, and she put together this radio experience, this audio experience of the story of her father's death, down to when he called her and she had the messages of him wanting to talk to her about him being sick and getting this diagnosis. And then, other voicemails, recordings of him on his deathbed, even his death rattle. She recorded that. That's that final, I'm sure you guys know what that moment is, what that sound is, to share that with an audience that you don't know. And then to end that whole audio experience with voicemails from people calling to, uncomfortably sometimes, awkwardly at others, but, with heartfelt intention, calling to offer condolences. And then the audio just ended. And we just sat there. It's what we needed to do as a group, but also I think it was asked of us, of her father. I don't think he came in as a ghost and got on stage and was like, can you guys just sit for it? I don't mean that in that spirited way. I think I could go there. I think we could talk about these moments in those terms, but I think simply his presence in her mind, in her creative work, and in us holding that through our listening was a request of him to sit silently, and sorry for the long answer to your question, but I think these perfect moments, and what the show does is these openings to be, can you feel it? Can you feel how open you are? Can you feel then how alive you are? And can you feel how precious it is?
I've written some words here. You said hugging, people hugs you. There's this sense of vulnerability. There's this sense of tenderness, silence, connection, and things. And all these words to me are around the area of love, really. This connection and loving people. And this is something that you wouldn't put close to death, by the way. This kind of words and death are somehow in our society are just like separated, And how strange is that today and that's my question, is it we have been so detached to each other because we don't think about death, because we have so death denial today and we're just focusing on only the good stuff? What do you think is, this sense of separation that I've sensed today? What do you think, Ned?
Well, you don't go to work to talk about, your dad dying, there's not a place like that, or a lot of the places in our day-to-day life, there's not room for us to be vulnerable and talk about these things that are like really at the center of our life experience. Mm-hmm. That's how the system of life is made. And I think it needs to be that way, because otherwise, if I could come to work and be that, we all would, and then Bank of America would just totally collapse because everyone would be crying at work, talking about their losses, being real sincere about the things they really care about. You know what I mean? Like, it doesn't work. I
would challenge you on this one.
That's okay.
I would challenge.
I would like to hear the challenge.
I would challenge you on this one because I really believe if people connect, actually this is something that I really believe in businesses. Today in businesses, I really believe that people are just desperate and because they lack connection.
I think it's available. Yeah. I agree with you. I think it's available, but it isn't happening.
Yeah. No. Well, the thing that I'm challenging is when you say banks will collapse. I'm not sure that they will collapse. Actually, I think maybe they will thrive. So maybe there's a new business here. Thrive with death. That's maybe we can do something.
Let me put it this way. Bank of America should probably close. And us being more authentic human beings would ask us to really address, what are we doing here at this bank? Like, what is this bank? You know what I mean? I agree. I think businesses and banks could thrive. And I think that's a very real possibility. And I'm sure it's happening, you know. It must be. We wouldn't be talking like this if it wasn't happening in the, like, all the interconnected ways that we are as like a conscious, universal conscious race of people. But I think there's a lot of life that doesn't make room for it, and that would need to be held accountable in new ways if it did really make space for our humanness and the sacredness, you know, of being human. And so this, again, a long answer to your question. I think part of this, the placement of like love, you know, empathy comes up for me, being, you know, and I think that's part of what happens at the show. And I think that's part of why I'm doing the show, is because I feel like I'm really attentive to people's painful experience of life and the potential they have for the joyful parts, you know. The show is a intense emotional experience, but it's also funny, you know. I mean, you can get a sense for how I would be in the show. We crack open and we cry, and then I'll say a joke, or someone will get up and share a ridiculous song that, you know, you would never expect at an event like this, but it's funny and we need it. And there's usually someone to play that role. There's a jester to get up and make us laugh. And I do that a little bit myself. But I think that's how love finds its place with death. And I think love finds its place with death when it's allowed to be in relationship with life, you know. Why wouldn't love be born from that? And I know I'm making like this sort of cheesy metaphor, but it is that opening that relationship and opening to each other's love is going to be there. When I'm vulnerable with you and I cry and I talk about my mom and she's brought into the space from that share, or when you get up and you say, I tried to commit suicide 3 years ago. I mean, this is the kind of stuff people get up and talk about. There's not a lot of room for anything but love. You know, this children's book, Cry Heart But Never Break. I think it maybe came out in the last couple of years, but it's this children's book, a story of death going to a home to take the grandma of these children. And it's her time, you know, she's upstairs in bed, she's on her deathbed, but he comes in and he's heartbroken over having to do it, you know, and the kids try to distract him, you know, making him some coffee and keeping him in the kitchen, you know, as long as they can. But he has to. But you sense from this depiction, or the way that this artist captures death, that it's as much heart as it is like the act of needing to take the life, you know, that it's death that says, you know, to these kids, you know, cry heart but never break. It's the title of the book. It's this idea that, like, you know, you feel that emotion out of like your center, you know, feel that out of your like whole being, this loss, but don't let it break you. And by being, I think, just to tie it back into the show, by being that at these shows, by people doing that, like a night of 15, 20 people getting up and sharing that way, love is very present, and connectedness is very much a part of the experience.
It's almost like people are just looking for this place they go to where they've got permission to feel it.
That's a good word. Yeah, the permission is. I love that word for this, for sure.
I mean, it's the whole thing as well about it's when we close off. It's like, even if you look at the whole death denial thing that's in there, and you said that in the video about we avoid it, we deny it. And it's almost by opening ourselves up and allowing ourselves to look at that. And there was all that talk about where love comes in. It opens a door, and it's all the emotions come from the same place. We can't close off one without closing off the others. And that's the thing.
I think that's a great point.
Yeah, we can't actually, we can't say, oh, I'm not going to feel this, and still have the capability of feeling all the other emotions. It's one door. We close them all off. And obviously people are all at different levels of what they feel or what they don't. So the more we're denying stuff, the more we're suppressing it, the less ability we have to actually connect to people and feel that love that's there. So I think what you're doing provides that the place gives people permission to open that door up.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I like that description.
It's copywriting now.
Yeah, I might use it. That's Keith's. Anytime I use the phrase, and I'll make sure I mention your name.
As Keith said once.
Keith, we did a podcast anyway. I wanted to share these words. I think it'll probably lose the power of the moment and
exactly. Just I don't think I can claim that word. I can't. No.
Our legacy. We all need our legacy, and permission is yours. So I like that description, and I like the idea you said of having to open this door and not being able to just be like, well, that door over there, I want to keep that one closed, that one. I think that is part of what happens when you open the death door. It's just all right there. I mean, all the parts of our life, and that's when we talk about. I'm sorry to keep plugging Bank of America. I'm not. This isn't a plug.
Okay, you've been fired from them. Yeah, this is the story.
Either that, or we're going to be told afterwards. This show was sponsored by Bank of America.
Best bank ever.
Sponsored by. But it's what I kind of how I describe the accountability for all these parts of our life comes up. Having to really address things, not only just our heart and the deepest emotions we have, our deepest relation to reality, the hard parts, the dark parts, along with, the joy and wonder, that's all, at least for me, it's opening that door. All those things are right there. You can't count them out. You can't just keep those parts back. And I think that's why I get it when people don't want to go. I think that's why I get it when people kind of stare at me when I tell them the name of the show. It's like, I know it's a lot. It's hard, but it's work. And it's work that we have available to do, not just for ourselves. In fact, I'm not trying to play the, spiritual, guru role here, but I do feel like it's work that we need to do for others that need help accessing that door and help opening that door, because then they can see, well, look at me, like look, can you feel it? It's called an open mic, and there's times when I get to the show and there's signups there right away, and there's no one on the signup sheet. So I get up on stage, I'm like, you guys know this is an open mic, right? I don't know what you're here for unless you just want me to talk for 2 hours, which I will gladly do. But it's a sign up. It's yours. You're the performers. And so anyway, a few people sign up, and by intermission, and I usually, can you kind of skip
all
there?
Good.
I usually have a musician to hold the space, especially at the open mics, someone who comes and plays music throughout the night, 4 or 5 songs. So I can fill out that first half all right with me talking and a couple of performers and that musician. And then intermission hits. And usually, in fact, every time it has happened, it's open. The door is open. And then I come back from the intermission and there's 15 people, that have signed up that we need to cram into the second half. Right. And it's because they saw it happen, and they know that it's okay, and they've been given permission. That's Keith's word, by the way. Permission to
Bank of America.
They feel safe. The most powerful moments for me, a couple different things that happened in the show. One hugely special moment is when people get up and they say, I've never done this before. And I just wanted to talk about how I almost died giving birth. I mean, this happened like a month ago. This little girl, this little woman just got up on this chair, so tiny on this stage, and you could just tell she'd never done anything like it. And she shared this, she wasn't a performer. And that's the other thing about this show. It's not an open mic. It's not like come and jam your favorite Beatles song. It's like, no, you can do that. But what's being asked forth to the stage is that kind of powerful humanness, that just raw, again, I'm using words we've used already, but that raw, vulnerable authenticity, and people want to see that. If you get up and play a song really well because you're a great artist, but you don't bare your soul, people can tell, and it's fine. The space is there for you to do whatever you want, but you stand out, differently from everyone else who's just got up and shared from their heart fully.
There's a separateness in that, isn't there? There's suddenly it's someone getting up there, they're just performing, and then there's an audience. Whereas the other people, it's a connection. It's a conversation. That's happening
too. A really valuable offering. It's different to serve yourself. And again, I don't want to discourage people from coming and playing a song. There's times often when it's just needed that someone gets up and sings whatever. We just need a breath, even bad performers, we're like, thank you for doing
thank you for the Miley Cyrus song. Very good, very exactly. Nice,
We needed it. We needed it. And the night works that way. The night, it forms through my facilitation and sometimes intuition that totally, I have stories that just bizarre little connections of who goes when and the references to other people's work accidentally, the themes that come up. It's totally mind-boggling to me sometimes. Every night.
Sounds amazing. I'd love to go to one. I'd actually love to go to one.
Can we come and perform together?
What do you got? It's 11 a.m. The show is in 8 hours. Of course, please. I can't wait till you guys visit.
I'm definitely interested.
I would love to. I would love to actually experience one of those. They sound amazing.
Yeah,
I'm happy, guys.
I'm curious to know about the impact that it has on you. This thing, because you started this in 2009, you said so, and here today we are in 2017. So, how did you feel yourself transforming or changing, or did you change at all from all these experiences?
Well, yeah, that's it's a good question, but it's not clear, to me. I think the one measurement I have for the value of being involved in this is that it's made my life more rich. And I actually mean because of the conversation, because of the community that I've made, because of every show experience. And of course it has to inform my life. It has to inform. I can't get away from the conversation of you're going to die and its impact on my relationship with my wife or my relationship with my kids. It's there. But I was talking to this guy yesterday about it, and he kind of noted that there's still this struggle for me when he sees the videos that are online, and it's true. There's still this life and death is, it's still there over here. One's here and one's here. It's not like, blended together in some powerfully, what's the word I'm looking for? Like this great understanding, like I'm at peace with it all, that's not how I relate to it. It still is a struggle, like the suffering and the loss, like how much doesn't make sense. And that's still very much there. But I also think that's part of my work, and that You're Going to Die lets me keep doing that. And it really lets me keep being in the place that I don't bring answers to the show because I don't know what the answers are. In fact, I don't know if there are answers. And I trust right now, at least in what You're Going to Die offers me, is that floating space of not being able to be grounded fully and kind of losing security a little bit in acknowledging that I'm mortal, and that I'm going to lose everything.
There's another thing that I wanted to ask you, because you described at the very beginning when you were a kid, you had this death anxiety, which I believe, this is what happened. You could a sense you could picture yourself dying or whatever, and you were rushing to see your mom. Do you still have this death anxiety today at your age? How is it for you? How do you cope with that? Is it softened a little bit? I'm curious.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. I think probably the initial version of engagement with my death and my mortality, maybe there could be some like anxiety connected to that. But when I'm really deeply in it, and again, like, what are we talking about? That part of, well, what is me really understanding death or really comprehending death? I think it's impossible. But I do think when in interestingly enough, in my anxious moments in a day, in those moments of overwhelm, the parts that are hard, my getting present to my death, even down to the specifics, you know, like my deathbed, it kind of dissolves anxiety. It dissolves those parts that are a burden, you know, because there's no room when I get to there. And I think I've gotten good at that practice of finding freedom from what doesn't really matter when I can get to that eventuality. It's and you know in Buddhism, I think one of the meditations, it's just death meditation, imagining your body and yourself. You know, I don't take it that far, but I think there's some connection. This idea of the peace that I feel when I imagine my last breaths and just sort of being in total sensory experience, assuming that I won't be in agonizing pain or hit by a bus.
Yeah.
But there's something there from imagining going like that. It's hard. It's hard to talk about that stuff, especially with a kid, you know? But I think it seems hard. And in fact, with kids, I think it's probably easier than we could ever imagine, because they can lead it. And if they don't want to know anything else, they won't ask.
I think you're
if you don't know the answer, if you don't know the answer, just say so.
we reframe that in a way to make it easier on ourselves. It's our own heartbreak and our own emotion we're feeling, and there's a part of us that are saying we don't want to put that onto the child because it's unfair on the child. But you've probably got a really good point in that the child will probably lead that conversation. And the actual help to both the adult and the child equally by having the conversation could be really powerful.
And as simple as it could be, you know? You know, and I have like 10 children's books about death, and I don't read them to my kids. I'm not chasing it down, but when my son's fish died, we held
bedtime stories. Yeah,
exactly. Right?
Okay, now it's your death.
Yes.
Death story.
Every night, one
death story. Every time.
No, I mean, but when his fish died, we made space for it, and I didn't have all the answers, but he brought up everything. He talked about us dying, and you know, what do you say to that? But
is he afraid?
I think it just happened.
Does he share the same anxiety that you had as a kid, or how is it?
I don't think so.
No?
It didn't come up much then. In fact, you know, with a 5-year-old, it's kind of hilarious. It's the fish died. We buried him in the backyard. I'm putting, like you said, Keith, like this drama on it, and it's like a movie, you know, that I'm filming with my son and the fish and the hole. And he's suddenly just laughing and running off, screaming, you know, hysterically about Legos or something. And it's just, you know, but he was there, and I was there for what he had to, the emotion he had to get out, you know. And I think maybe that more than anything. And I guess that's what my mom did, you know. But I just think there's a little more of, okay, well, do you have, you know, there was a little more space to what is it that you're feeling? Do you have questions, you know? I don't even think I said that. He just brought stuff up. He wanted to go to a museum. He just brought it up on his own. He said, I want to go to a museum about death, you know, and he asked if we were going to die. And, you know, I said, well, we're not planning on it, you know, anytime soon. And that's real. That's honest. I could die tomorrow. I don't need to tell him that, but you know, I just said, I'm not planning on it, buddy. And that's good enough. He didn't say, well, what if a plane lands on your head tomorrow? You know, like, who's going to take care of us? He didn't go there, so I didn't have to.
I would like to have one request, actually, because I've noted this. You said that during your shows, you're opening up by everyone saying, I am going to die. Is it what everyone
want to do it?
Can we do it?
We should do it.
We should do
I'll
it.
do it. I'll do it. It's very simple.
Yeah, can you just show us how can you do it? You know, just show us. You know.
Yes, totally. You guys are going to do it as if you're the audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thanks for coming. This evening is sponsored by Bank of America. Before we get started, you know, and this is what I say, so I'm just going to say it. Before we get started, you know, I spend the whole month going online on tweeting about your death, going on Facebook about your death, posting memes about your death, writing articles about your death. You're going to die, and I'm telling you all month, but here we are right now together. and I just need you to do something for me. And in so doing, you're going to help kind of take the onus a little bit, take responsibility for this evening with me. And I can just like rest a little easier, a little lighter on my shoulders and not carry your death for you when we'll all carry our deaths together. So on the count of 3, if you all would say together, I'm going to die. And just a note, please don't say, Ned, you're going to die, like it's a quote. You have to say, quote, I'm going to die, end quote. Okay?
Let's go.
On the count of 1, 2, 3.
I'm going to die.
Yes.
Excellent. I feel alive now, actually.
I do too. Tingly. Got the chills.
We hope you enjoyed this week's episode. Again, please support the show by signing up at deathhangout.com or clicking on the subscribe button on your screen.